That was
Thank you, Councillor B.
That's all right.
We'll come back now.
Firstly, just like to welcome everyone here today on this lovely Tuesday, and we'll declare the meeting open. Members of the public are advised that recommendations to Council contained within this agenda can be subject to alteration. Applicants and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until such time as written advice is received confirming Council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval from the Shire. The Shire advises that anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by Council regarding the application. Council members and the community are reminded that should an exception resolution be passed by Council, that this has the effect of making the decision to accept the officer recommendation stated in the agenda without change as the Council's decision. An audio and or visual record will be made of these proceedings to assist in the taking of minutes. Acknowledgement of Country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to land, waters and community, and we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders both past and present. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. Neil. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Neil. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Bromman.
Thank you, Mr. President. An economy is much like a garden. Look after the soil, and the soil looks after the roots, and the roots allow the garden to flourish. Invest invest in your community so it is sustainable in the long term.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interests. Are there any others that aren't listed on the screen, councillors? Councillor Cavoni.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll declare a financial interest in item 12.3.2, the proposed extractive industry licence. As manager of MGM Bulk and manager of Quarries, we have a conflict of interest there, and I'll leave the room for that item. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cavoni. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, it's listed there, my impartiality interest in 12.2.3. I will leave chambers for that item. Okay. It says I'll stay.
Okay. Any others not listed, councillors? Councillor Bromley.
Mr. President, I'll declare an interest in the Public Harbour Regional Council item, and I'll stay in the chamber and treat it on its merits.
Okay, item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice. Neil. Item 7, public question time. Sheila Ferguson, would you like to ask your question?
Sheila Ferguson, Unit 4, 58 Old Coast Road, Australand. As part of the community consultation process referred to in item 12.1.4, will you provide the community with information on the estimated cost of building and operating 2 centres for the administration of Shire and Council business, as opposed to 1, and the business plan or cost-benefit analysis that supports the case for 2 centres, so the community can express an informed opinion on the location of the proposed new Australand Community Precinct? I should have said I have 2 questions. That's the first one.
regards to the estimated cost of the building and operation and the cost-benefit analysis, the Shire had engaged APP to develop a feasibility plan for the Australind Community Precinct and also an operations report. So as part of that information, that will look at the cost-benefit analysis in regards to the location of the two administration centres and also the estimated costs.
What I'm referring to is the big picture. That I think we need to know what the big picture is for the Shire as a whole, and I don't believe that you can make decisions on where parts of the big picture go without knowing the big picture, and we don't know that.
Thank you. As part of the September officer's recommendation for the Australind Community Precinct, part of that recommendation was to finalise the feasibility plan, which will be included once the location has been determined in Australind.
So is that a cost-benefit analysis for the need for two centres? That's what I'm getting at, not where the Australind one should be located, but the big picture for the Shire as a whole, what we need and what we can afford. And I think we need to know that before we make decisions on where parts of that big picture are located.
Yeah, thank you for that. As part of the confidential report, which was an operations plan that was attached to the September council report, that provided information to councillors in regards to the assessment for the location of Shire administration facilities and the percentage of staff that would be located between those two facilities. That will determine the size of what is provided in Australind and what is provided in Harvey. So that's a process that council is going through at the moment.
Well, thank you for that information, and it leads on to my next question, which is, given the importance to the community of the location of community facilities, the large cost of these projects and the need for ratepayers to be properly informed, why does council not make the consultants' reports available to the public, even if it's in a redacted form?
I'm aware that there's been an FOI request for the confidential attachment to the council report. As mentioned previously when there was a question in regards to that, it is confidential in regards to the information that's been provided by staff that feeds into that, and that FOI request is currently being assessed.
But my request is specifically, if there's information relating to staff, can it not be provided if the crucial information that relates to staff is redacted?
Yeah, that FOI request is currently being
But my question's nothing to do with that FOI request. It's not just referring to one consultant, I'm being in general. There's another one today that's behind, there's more than, there's about 3 or 4 along the way. So I'm asking why these have to be, why can't the public be fully informed about, because they're enormous projects, they're of crucial importance, the location of community facilities. It's not just one thing, it's of major importance for now and in the future. And I believe ratepayers could be much better informed if you would release for public knowledge some of these consultants' reports, even if they're redacted.
Yeah.
So that's my
Thank
question.
You. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms Penny Tony.
Good afternoon. During the briefing session last week, the Shire Planning Department seemed to indicate that the R16 restrictions on Kookaburra Close and Freshwater Lakes estates had either been changed or were in the process of being removed. Could the Shire please confirm that the zoning for both of these developments are currently, and have been since 2003, general farming with R16 restrictions, preventing permanent residency and limiting occupancy to short stay accommodation, and that any changes to this restriction will require an amendment to the local planning scheme, which will have to be endorsed by Council, the WA Planning Commission, and go through the advertising process before it can be implemented.
Mr Hall.
Through Mr Chairman. Ms Patani, as you know, there's Kookaburra Close and Freshwater Lakes, so they're two separate entities within that particular establishment. Yes, you're correct. Both of them are zoned to general farming at the moment, with the restricted use right, which is called number 16, which limits the occupation of any dwelling in that area to a short stay accommodation. So since 2013, the council of the day actually resolved to allow permanency within the Kookaburra Close street. However, within the rest of freshwater lakes, that restriction still exists. There is a scheme amendment that's being worked through at the moment to actually remove that short stay restriction formally across both entities, and it's only recently that one of the issues, being the effluent disposal component in and around the lake, has actually been resolved, so that amendment can actually progress. The decision or the desire to actually move away from short stay accommodation and allow for permanent accommodation in there was actually part of our local planning strategy, which has been adopted by the Department of Planning 18 months, Tuesday.
Yeah, they will still have to go through the whole process, though.
Sorry, yes, correct, yes.
And we will have opportunity
yes.
as neighbours to have some input into that decision.
That process is a public process that is advertised for a period of not less than 28 days, and all neighbours, in fact anyone within the Shire, has the opportunity to make comment on.
Okay. Sorry, I did have two questions. Yeah. With reference to the council minutes of the 11th of March 2003, a copy of the deputation dated the March 4th 2003 was included, and point 3, sorry, that was an agenda copy, and point 3 of the deputation agenda refers to adjoining neighbours' land usage and potential conflict. The subsequent recommendation from the council was that Lot 101 be utilised for permanent residences, Lot 101 being Kookaburra Close, subject to a modified development concept plan being submitted and approved by council. Was a modified development plan submitted and subsequently approved? And it sounds like that might have happened in 2013.
Through Mr Chairman, look, that recommendation from 2003 did require the need for that modified guide plan. Brutally honest, I have not actually found one on our files at all. So as far as that recommendation is concerned, the conditions associated with it remain outstanding.
Okay, so the 2013 decision, that wasn't put, you're saying a decision was made?
2013?
Sorry, I thought you said in answer to the previous question.
Oh, sorry.
That in 2013 a decision was made?
No, 2013? No.
Oh, sorry.
2003. Oh, I made reference to the 2003 one. Yes,
sorry.
So not 2013. No, so 2003 is the one that you're referring to now. No, the condition of one of the recommendations of council at the time was for that guide plan to be updated and amended. I have no record of that on file at all, and my staff can't find one either. So, as I said, that recommendation of council appears to be still outstanding.
So that recommendation, so the R16 is still on both properties?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Jesse, Tony.
Good afternoon, councillors. All of the properties under discussion today on Rig Road are located in the Mile Up Horticultural Precinct and are within a designated priority agricultural area. Considering this, would it not be the desired outcome if we were to the council's satisfaction, provide environmental buffers and offsets that would allow us to utilise the land for horticulture and address the concerns of the neighbouring residents?
Okay. Thanks, Jesse. Look, that's actually probably a pretty good one actually to use. So I was going to answer your question with showing some slides on the. Look, the issue of providing buffers may address the concerns of some of the residents out there, and we are not in the game of not providing opportunities for people to maximise the use of their property, whether it's residential, whether it's agriculture, whatever. We just don't want to be doing that. But when you do have a land use conflict between the two, it does get very complicated. As far as using the buffers are concerned, and the current plan is actually for a 300 metre buffer separating, look, that might resolve some of the issues, but it's not the only issue that we have in regard to this particular application. You are actually still requiring to clear a significant amount of vegetation for that change of land use to actually occur, and that results in considerable loss of habitat, the clearing of federally declared native vegetation, it also actually changes the amenity of that area in regard to the place of landscape value. So the provision of a buffer that's to the satisfaction of neighbours or even to council is only one component of the application that we're having to assess. There are other aspects which obviously at the moment remain of concern.
Yeah, and I think there's more information regarding that too, that's been done with DPOR and other environmental people, but I think that will be covered later in the deputation. My second question was, what farming activities can be performed on a property designated as general farming without obtaining development approval?
Through Mr Chair, the actual question that I received was what commercial activities could actually be, so not farming activities. So from the question that was sent through in terms of in a general farming, sort of a change of land use or a commercial activity all requires development approval. And in this particular case, because it's in a place of landscape value, that is an overriding trigger that actually requires everything that happens on that site to actually come through to us for development approval.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren Patani.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have two questions relating to the same issue. My first question is, did the development plan that was approved for lots 101 and 100, being Kookaburra Close and the Freshwater Lakes Estate, address the conflicting land uses and determine appropriate or, if any, buffer zones to mitigate the impacts of the already existing agricultural land that was in place at that time?
Through you, Mr Chairman, look, reviewing the environmental management plans that were submitted with that application and with the land uses that were actually there at the time. Look, if you recall, north of the land that is now Kookaburra Place was actually fully vegetated and at the time that the plan was going through. And to the east, it brought acre farming. So intensive horticulture wasn't actually an immediately adjoining land use. And the reports that we've seen back in the day that when it was approved, consideration was given to it, but there were no formal buffers or anything that were put in place as a consequence of that approval.
All right, so there was nothing to mitigate the impacts of what was there already occurring?
From reviewing the files, there was nothing put in place at that time.
Okay. And my second question is to assist in and expedite the consultative process and to confirm the specific requirements and conditions for all stakeholders, would the Shire consider making public the development approval documentation for Kookaburra Close and Freshwater Lakes Estate developments?
Through Mr Chairman, I'm happy to make available all those documents that are public documents, yeah. And because it was a rezoning, it was a structure plan, a lot of those would probably be public documents, but if they're not, we will advise.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. Ebony Ryan.
Hi everyone, my name's Ebony Ryan. I'm a resident of Kookaburra Close, the strata adjacent to Lots 6 and 8 Rig Road Mile Up. Parent of small 4 children and work part-time within the Shire of Harvey. My concerns regarding the proposed vegetation clearing and horticulture include potential water contamination. We rely on rainwater tanks for all our water needs. The use of herbicides and pesticides, especially on Lot 8 where the proposed buffer is only 30 metres as opposed to 300 metres, may have the potential to contaminate our drinking water. Myself, my husband, our children and our neighbours have the right to access safe drinking water, and we don't know what the potential long-term effects of drinking contaminated drinking water is and who would be responsible for testing and treating this. Another concern would be the flora and fauna removal. As you know from the agenda, the removal of chewit trees, some of which are estimated to be 200 years old, and therefore the habitat of the black cockatoos and western ringtail possum is not acceptable. Part of the beauty of living in Kookaburra Close is the wildlife in such close proximity, which you can't get living in suburbia. It would be extremely disappointing if the wildlife were not able to survive due to the removal of their habitat. Another concern is noise and dust pollution. I'm aware that noise from farm machinery is exempt from assigned noise levels. However, when we purchased our property more than 7 years ago, we were enticed by the quiet and peaceful nature of the property, which can potentially be jeopardised. The application states bare soil will attempt to be minimised, but I do worry about the impact of dust on our children's health as well as our properties and possessions. Also potential odour from vegetables and chemicals, and last point, land value. Due to the points mentioned previously, I'm not sure what the effects of having proposed clearing and horticulture would be on the value of our property. So in summary, we purchased our property with the ideal of raising our children in a safe, quiet and community-orientated neighbourhood, which is exactly what it's been so far. So I just feel that if this potentially goes ahead, it could potentially affect our health as well as the lifestyle that we've come to know and love. Thank you.
Mrs. Casey Tompkinson.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, councillors and staff. My name is Casey and I'm here today with my 2 young children. I'm a mum, a wife, and I work part-time in the Shire of Harvey. As of September this year, we are the new homeowners of 5 Kookaburra Close, adjacent to Lot 8, the lot in question. I speak in connection with the application of the planning of the vegetation clearing in Lots 6 and 8, Rig Road. Together as my family, we say no to this idea that brings us here today. The most significant reasoning behind our objection is the concerns of the dust, the chemical sprays that may result into further allergies and potentially triggering my youngest daughter's asthma. The noise from machinery that may have impact on my husband's shift work, and also the impacts associated with the use of herbicides and pesticides, with fears that this will contaminate our rain tanks, which is the only water we have. This is our drinking water, the water we shower in, and the water we cook in. We should have the right to drink safe water, right? We've just purchased our forever home after residing in Bridgetown for a very long time. This is our forever home that we look forward to raising our children in many years to come. These children are the next generation. We enjoy the nature and the tranquility that this home brings and the love of our community, Kookaburra Close. We have enjoyed the friendships that we've created in this short time we've been here. Moving forward, we love what we see at our back door, the kangaroos that come to our back fence, all the wildlife, big and small, coming and going, the different species of birds that my children are now obsessed with. We love listening to all the variety of birds that are so content in their surroundings. Why would you want to take that enjoyment and quality of life away from us? I now ask all councillors, please vote no, please object to the application and also object to the application being deferred in March 2022. I also support the conclusion in the agenda that states that the recommendation is that the application be refused, despite the request for deferral to March 22. Thank you for allowing me to express my views today. I trust that you'll make a decision soon and put it to rest. This is our family, these are my children, and these are the next generation.
Mr. David Byrne. Natasha, you're...
So I'm Natasha, sorry, he's looking after our little one, so I'll do the speech. So, good evening, President and Councillors. I'm here, obviously, we are here to talk about the clearing of Lot 6 and 8 Rig Road. Before I start, I just want to say to Mrs Patani, I did see in the meeting last week that you did state you were receiving some death threats, and I really want to apologise for that. I think that there is no need for that. And it's very disappointing that you did receive that, so I do apologise. So basically, there are a few concerns that have been raised within our family for this application was to go ahead. Firstly, as you can see, we, along with the other members of this community, have young children who live in the Remlap estate. Our concerns with regards to this proposal are what long-term health effects could be made on these children when they are drinking the rainwater that we catch off our roofs and breathe in the air that is possibly contaminated with herbicides, pesticides or any other given chemicals to help grow the market garden. The youngest child in this estate that I am aware of is 3 years old, and he's my son. Our family plans on living at our property until we are well into our retirement. That means my youngest child has the possibilities and potentials of being exposed to harmful chemicals for at least 17 to 20 years while he lives with us. What impact will this have on his health or any of the other growing children in the Remlap estate? We bought our property back in February this year. Both of us had been wanting to move to this type of rural lifestyle for many years, as it's a fabulous way to raise children compared to the city life that we were living. Before we placed an offer on the property located on Kookaburra Close, we rang the Harvey Shire and asked if there were any development plannings going ahead or if there were any plans in the pipeline around this area that would affect this property and or its location. Subsequently, we were told no. If we had known that this clearing has been proposed, we would not have gone through with the purchase of this property. Not only will this application decrease the value of our forever home and cause possible health risks, but it will destroy many homes of our native wildlife that live in this area. We have an abundance of red-tailed cockatoos, kingfishers, honeybees and ring-tailed possums, just to name a few. They feel safe in this location, and to be honest, so do we. But how safe can we feel when there will be excessive winds and dust, chemicals going into our roof where we collect our drinking water, noise pollution of farm mechanicry and clearance of trees that assist with a buffer for us? As a parent of young children being exposed to these possibilities, I don't feel safe. I would like to request that there is no deferral and the decision is made today for the outcome of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Penny Patani.
Sorry. Okay, well, I mean, I first of all would have to comment, we have just confirmed that these properties are all zoned for temporary residents. They are not permanent residents. That is noted on their titles. That would be in all planning information. I googled it. I find a lot of these comments frustrating. I understand where they're coming from, but I find it frustrating that they're making this decision and this statement now after they've purchased properties. After they've purchased properties that have R16 zoning on them. They've purchased properties, especially the more recent purchases, they've purchased properties with horticulture all around them. The comments that are being made, some of them have been addressed already. I think there are misconceptions about horticulture and what we do and how we do it, because the statements that are being made are just not true. Anyway, I'll get back on track to what I plan to say, but I'm sorry, I can't keep ignoring people saying comments about they've bought these properties to live in and they've bought them with horticultural attached to them, and they've bought them as permanent residences and they should not be living there as permanent residents. They are zoned temporary. They're not zoned for 90 days, sorry, I think it's 3 months cumulatively per annum. Good afternoon. The question that we've been asked, the questions that we have asked of the council today were not designed to be adversarial, but they were designed to highlight some of the complicated issues that are influencing our development approval. We would hope that all parties are able to see that it would be far better for everybody and easier for everybody to approve our deferral request so that we can work together to implement a consultative process and on these matters and progress the actions in a consolidated way which allows everybody's voice to be heard. Some of the information supplied by the Planning Department requires clarification. Some of the matters raised have already been addressed, and some of the issues will need some compromise. An example of misunderstandings and required clarification, reference was made by the Planning Department that our revised buffer for Lot 8 did not conform with the guidelines. We believe this to be incorrect. The 30-metre vegetation buffer combined with within Lot 8, combined with the additional vegetation planting in public space, is suitable as per the Health Department guidelines, which state National geographic features, public open spaces, road reserves, etc. can be used to meet the separation distances. We have since increased the buffer area to 40 metres anyway, but this demonstrates a benefit of clarification via consultation. With regard to the concerns that have been raised regarding the western ringtail possum, the original proposal did not in fact seek to clear the area where the western ringtail possum, I'll refer to that as WRP from now on, had reportedly been sighted. I would also like to provide a brief update from South West Environmental to outline what has been achieved since the proposal was advertised. Revised areas. The proposed clearing area is necessarily located over soil suitable for the purpose of horticulture. The following avoidance and mitigation measures have been adopted through the project designed to minimise impacts. The project footprint has been selected to minimise impacts on soils, lands that are not critical to the project. Most of the wetland area in Lot 6 has been avoided, including an area of around 0.5 hectares, patched with peppermints and hollow trees. Trees along the northern boundary of Lot 6, including several with hollows, will be retained to provide a partially vegetated corridor, circa 1.4 hectares. An additional planting will be carried out along the eastern boundary of Lot 6 with local native provenance species, inclusive of chewits. Vegetation in the east of Lot 8 will be retained to provide a substantial vegetated corridor. Vegetation along the western boundary of Lot 8, where a single western ringtail possum was observed, will be retained. Proposed buffer planting will be carried out along the northern and northeastern boundaries of Lot 8 with local native provenance species. The artificial dams, of which there are 3, will be retained, providing watering points for fauna. Following consultation with Dwyer and the feedback received by the Shire of Harvey through the preliminary assessment process, the following mitigation measures have been adopted. Reduction of the total clearing of native vegetation to 6.28 hectares, 3.87 hectares in Lot 6 and 2.41 hectares in Lot 8. Reduction of the TEC impacts in Lot 6 to 3.75 from the original 3.9 hectare identified by Dwyer. We've added a 10-metre buffer to the northern boundary of Lot 6 to protect the Carnaby's cockatoo nesting tree, several chewits and other trees along the boundary, and to maintain connectivity between habitat patches west to east. We've added in a 16-metre buffer along the western boundary of Lot 6, 10 metres of planting plus 6 metres of no planting, along 560 metres, accounting for 0.33 hectare of planting, to provide screening to the west and retain several chewits and other trees. We've allocated an area for a 40-metre wide buffer from the northeast of Lot 6 south to Rig Road to provide screening from the houses, improve visual amenity, enhance black cockatoo and WRP habitat, enhance habitat connectivity between the vegetation patch north of Lot 6 south to retain vegetation in Lot 8. This includes the retention of an area of TEC and PEC within the broader 2.72 hectare area allocated for potential planting. We've increased the proposed planting buffers in the north and northwest of Lot 8 from 20 metres to 40 metre width, totalling 2.6 hectares. This will involve the retention of an additional 11 DBH trees and several peppermints and provide a significant buffer from houses in the north, enhance visual amenity and enhance black cockatoo and WRP habitat, enhance habitat connectivity between the area of WRP habitat and the wetland system to the east. The proposed planted buffers will form part of the project offset proposal. At a broader level, they will improve and enhance existing habitat linkage, as well as black cockatoo and WRP habitat values locally, as well as provide screening from roads and houses and improve local visual amenity. With regard to WRP, direct impacts to critical aspects have been avoided where possible, including retention of the WRP habitat in Lot 8. WRP was not found and is not likely to occur in Lot 6. As noted in South West Environmental Report 2020, the isolated paddock trees in Lot 8 proposed to be cleared do not provide high value habitat due to the lack of connection between trees. WRP are highly arboreal, and due to the subsequent high risk of predation. Key WRP habitat, i.e. vegetation where the animal was found, will be retained within Lot 8, along with the vegetated connection to the east and west land, which will be significantly enhanced through a proposed 40-metre wide connected vegetated corridor from the existing habitat. Further, an additional 40-metre wide vegetation connected will be planted north of Rig Road, connecting Lot 8 to the proposed offset site north of Lot 6. These vegetated corridors will result in a long-term net positive impact to WRP within both Lot 6 and 8, combined with strategic revegetation of buffers linking vegetation off-site. Overall impacts to WRP at the local level will also be positive. Connectivity. Revegetation, infill planting and clearing buffers are proposed throughout Lots 6 and 8, which would enhance overall existing local landscape connectivity, including boosting strategic connections between wetland areas, important arterial corridors for WRP and other fauna that do not currently occur. It would also link the intact native vegetation patch, which is currently relatively isolated to other areas, including Lot 6 and 8, and eventually the wetland and landscape corridor east of Lot 8. It will improve habitat and vegetation values of existing areas that are currently grazed, improve the existing wetland function and on-site nutrition management. Native vegetation within the proposed clearing areas is completely degraded, in a completely degraded condition as per circa EPA 2016, and existing as mostly disconnected paddock trees with little or no understory, having been heavily grazed for many years. Paddock trees have limited habitat value for many faunal groups, particularly those that rely on understory or mid-story for resources, refuge, cover, food, etc. Many fauna would benefit from enhancement of part of the site with understory and mid-story as proposed, including reptiles, amphibians, many families of aves and most mammals, including target species such as WRP. Black cockatoos. The project area within Lot 6 provides breeding habitat for Carnaby cockatoos and FRTBC only. Borden's cockatoos are likely to only use Lot 8 for foraging based on expert advice from Tony Kirkby with Southwest Environmental and included in the 2020 report. Direct impacts to critical aspects have been avoided where possible with the development area. The following values are noted. There's a retention of a total of 33 DBH trees within Lot 6. We've added a 10-metre buffer to the northern boundary of Lot 6 to protect the Carnaby's cockatoo nesting tree. We're retaining a significant area in the north of Lot 8 with 41 DBH trees plus several peppermints and paperbarks, 2.26 hectares. As part of the offsets proposed, Patani Farms will commit to the installation of artificial hollows for the future breeding. The installation of artificial hollows within a known breeding area will potentially provide additional resources to those currently available. The native vegetation canopy areas within the proposed clearing footprint have been revised approximately 6.2 hectares in total, 3.87 hectares in Lot 6 and 2.4 hectares in Lot 8. Now, all of this information is hot off the press. That's been going backwards and forwards between DWER and ourselves over the last couple of weeks, and we've taken into account and added some things in there that we think will address some of the issues that have been raised over the advertising period. I hope that all of this information demonstrates that we've listened to the feedback provided so far, and again, we are willing to work with stakeholders. And as mentioned, we'd really like you to approve the deferral request that we've made so that, as I've stated before, we can all get in the room and we can thrash out the issues and we can use scientific information to address the issues that have been raised, and which some of them have already been addressed and can be very easily addressed and explained. But we'd like that opportunity to all be together to nut this out instead of a lot of correspondence going backwards and forwards that loses its connectivity to the process. Thank you.
Miss Christina Masella Blackwood.
Good afternoon. President, councillors and staff, I'm the owner of lot 50, 115 Rig Road, and I also object to the clearing of native vegetation in lot 6 and 8. I also would like to object to the request to have the application deferred until March next year. I have read and understood and would like to acknowledge and accept the officer's recommendation in today's meeting in full. It was an extensive, accurate report and I'm grateful. With fellow owners here today, together we are representing 72 residential lots of owners and are in full agreement to reject the Botany Farm's current application and any deferment request. We are prepared to see this through together. This area of freshwater lakes in Kookaburra Close was developed by Palmsgate, known as Rembrandt, Investments with the Botany family involved back in 1995. I believe it was I think Penny's father-in-law. So the development didn't just happen without neighbouring knowing about it. There is an abundance of flora and fauna, all important, strong populations of native birds, as well as mammals, reptiles, water plants, wildflowers, with some being endangered species like the black cockatoo, long-necked turtle and ringtail possum. The request to clear more than 200 old-growth trees and to plough these areas of soil would be devastating to say the least. All these animals need the area so they have a healthy ecosystem to feed, shelter, breed and nest. Back on the 19th of May, Freshwater Lakes Strata engaged the services of Bernie Masters. He is a qualified environmental consultant and he's had a relationship with freshwater lakes for more than 20 years, keeping the lake healthy. He submitted this proposal on behalf of the owners to the Shire of Harvey and Dewar for and on behalf of the owners and it acknowledges and researches the submission, and I encourage all councillors to read it. Apparently it's in the attachments, is what I've been told. Mr Masters has been involved even in recent years and has found that, you know, we have a responsibility as owners to look after that lake and also the environment. I, as well as other owners, feel there will be an increase of health risks to our families. Already we see residue from the existing market garden farms in the area from the west, sand, dust, chemical sprays, machinery traffic, noise, nighttime lighting, use of fertilisers, strong odours including discarded rotting vegetable waste that is dumped and fed to cattle. Regular ploughing of these areas will all have contributing health effects to residents. These 72 residential lots are all privately owned. They are our homes and we are prepared to stand up and protect our homes. Our beautiful environment, in particular our lake with its flora and fauna. No amount of screening, I'm sorry Penny, will be adequate to keep dust, fertilisers from winds. I mean, what kind of sort of like fencing?
If we could just please stick to the deputations without directing
but
Ms Botany.
we're talking about trees this height. It's not going to cover the dust. And if you look at that lot 6 again, it's barren. It's absolutely barren where they want to do more market gardens. So I will now ask the councillors to please vote no. Please object to the application and also to the application deferred. I would like to say, because it was mentioned in last week's meeting and it has already been brought up, that the Patani family has received death threats and abuse. This is very concerning to all us owners, and we find that it most likely unfounded, but if there is reports, it should be directed to the police for further investigation. If I can just answer the zoning, because it was brought up today. The 90-day short-term zoning, we all know that that is in place now. When I bought my property with my husband 6 years ago, we were informed that it was short-term stay and that it was like you can stay there for 3 months, leave for one night and then return. So we're all aware of that, but we're also aware that we're working to have that removed and that we're looking at permanent stay. So we're not going anywhere, and you know, we just say no to any more market gardens. We've already got the Castros, the Galadis and also the Batanis, and that area where they're looking at now, there's not enough coverage to have any kind of buffer zone that's substantial to keep dust away. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, item 9, announcements by presiding member or CEO without discussion. I would just like to just comment on a couple of things. So Cassie Corelli, I'd just like to, she received a highly commended Emerging Leader of the Year award, so congratulations to Cass. Also to the Harvey Rec and Cultural Centre, so to David and all his staff. They were the Pinnacle Performing Arts Award for WA Presenter of the Year, and they beat Karratha and Albany, so it's an outstanding job that they've done there, so to all of their staff. Welcome to Mark Chadwick, Manager of Environmental Health Services. Welcome to the Shire, Mark. And to the other person trying to hide up the back there, Frank Fimino, who's now Manager of Building Services. Congratulations, and look forward to you cracking down and getting some jobs done. I'm sure you haven't been busy enough of late. And also to our CEO Annie on her 3-year anniversary as CEO, and also is President of the Local Government Professionals of WA. So congratulations, Annie, and to everyone.
Sorry, I just did have an announcement. Congratulations to the Shire President for achieving his diploma in local government. So congratulations, there was a lot of work that went into that, and well deserved thank you.
Okay, item 10, confirmation of minutes. We have that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, 26th of October 2021 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Coleman. Likely to be any discussion? I'll put motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committees. The Bushfire Advisory Committee meeting held on the 15th of November 2021. That the minutes of the Bushfire Advisory Committee meeting held on Monday 15th of November 2021 as printed be received. Move Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Dickinson. Any discussion? I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12, reports. Shire of Harvey Standing Orders Local Law 2017 permits Council to adopt recommendations by exception of resolution or en bloc. Recommendations contained in the officers' reports to be adopted by exception of resolution with the exception of the following. So with the exception of 12.1.2, to 12.1.4, 12.2.2 to 12.2.4, 12.3.1 to 12.3.4, and 12.5.1 to 12.5.3, which are to be considered separately. The officer's recommendations for item 12.1.1, which is the quarterly report, quarter 1, 2021-22. 12.2.1, application for exemption to keep more than the prescribed number of dogs. 12.3.5, shed conversion to a dwelling. 12.3.6, shed conversion to a dwelling. 12.4.1, financial statements as at 31st of October 2021. And 12.4.2, listings of accounts paid October 2021. Move, Councillor Cavoni. Second, Councillor Campbell. Is there any discussion or put the motion? Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried.
Can I move another motion?
Councillor Cavoni.
Can I move that the agenda be taken out of order so that we deal with item 12.3.1 first and then the rest in order?
Seconder?
Yeah.
Yep. Councillor Bromwell. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? No. Councillor Jackson?
Yes, I would like to consider a deferral, so can I move an alternative motion that the item be deferred till March?
We'll consider whether it's out of order and then we can...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. I thought we'd voted.
No, you're not, no, all good. Okay, so I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, so item 12.3.1. Yep. Have an officer's recommendation, or Councillor Jackson, you?
Yeah, that the item be deferred until March 2022.
Have a seconder, Councillor Cavoni. Councillor Jackson.
I want to convey my concerns about how this process might work into a final result. So whilst I have always in this council been an advocate for saving trees, the reality is that an agricultural property with a priority agricultural area has a right to farm and has to adhere to the planning and clearing regulations as they're determined. I fear that at the end there will be a loss of some vegetation here. We don't know the outcome of the Commonwealth process, and that might take until March. And that will take us out of any ability to determine where we might see buffers, how we might meet the needs of the adjoining communities between the rural use, agricultural use, and the people living in the short stay accommodation, which, for clarification from my knowledge, is 3 months per year, not 3 months stay away for a night and then stay another 3 months. So be aware that my knowledge of that is that if you can stay in a short stay accommodation for 3 months of the year, then that will be weighed up in a SAT process, which the agricultural zoning of that land might have more weight than what we're hearing today, that residents should have a lot more say about what's happening across the fence line. So my deferral today would be to achieve the outcome of the Commonwealth process. If the Commonwealth process says that there's room for negotiation, that the loss of all these trees isn't going to happen, but in fact that some of them might be able to, I want to be part of that discussion. If we say no today and the proponent takes this to a legal process of SAT, then there's no third party in that. There's no negotiation. It becomes a legal process, and I feel that process is not a good planning process. So let's hear the outcome of what the federal, the Commonwealth approvals process around clearing is, and then revisit this. And in that time, even in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the proponents talk about buffers, about the issues that they might need to bring forward to be able to achieve the best result for them, but the best result for the clearing permit that we would like to see retain, or I certainly would like to see retain as many trees as possible. But I don't believe all of them could be saved personally in that process. So I feel we need to hear the outcome of one process and then go down the line of working with the two parties as was put by the proponent. If this ends up in a SAP process, I don't think we'll be happy with what the result is. So I ask you to support a deferral.
Can I just seek clarification? Councillor Jackson, they were wanting to defer to the end of March, so it would be to the April meeting?
Really, I'm saying March because Ms Patani said that that would be when she believes that that process will be finalised, but I was actually going to say until that process was finalised. So really the two things come together for me. It would be the outcome of the Commonwealth process and the next council meeting after that. So because the request was for March, I'm saying March, if that wasn't the case. So if I could put or March or the outcome of the Commonwealth clearing, that would solve that problem.
Yep, thank you. As second, Councillor Caboni, you're happy with that?
I'll just very quickly add that I obviously concur with everything that Councillor Jackson so eloquently put. She does it in a far better way than what I could. But my view is the same as hers. If the council's to rule based on emotion, and we've seen that many times in this council over the years, to only have it go to SAT to get overturned and come back, and we're then required to vote the other way. Now there is a case before SAT at the moment with regards to the Chewits, with regards to an extraction licence, not one I'm involved with, but another case there, and I think we need to see what the outcome of that is as far as the Commonwealth Government and in regards to the Chewits. As Mrs Patani said, there's further issues to discuss and explore, options to explore. I think she should have that opportunity to go down that path and see if some common ground could be found. So that's what I'll add.
Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Jackson, do you right of reply?
I don't believe there's anything to reply, but I stand by that I'd like to retain as many trees here as possible, and I want to be part of that process rather than a legal process.
Okay, I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Okay, item 12.1.2, delegations review. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the opposite recommendation with two minor amendments that have what should be on the screen.
We have a seconder.
They're not on the screen, you have it. Oh, yeah.
I'm happy to second. Councillor Beach.
Yeah, very simple amendments, Mr. President, to 1.1.28, the recovery of rate debts being amended to include a condition requiring council to be notified when officers commence actions to take possession of land that will be sold by public auction, and the other one, 5.1.9, kennel establishments being amended to reword the delegated function as authority to grant or cancel kennel licence. Just a quick note on both of those. The rate recovery, by taking possession of land, I think is high level action, and in my opinion a last resort of our finance people. It's not without precedence. We have done it in this chamber in the past, but I'm of the view, because it is such a high level action, council as the ultimate decision maker should have input into such proceedings before staffing back on the process, and having council involved also puts an extra level of protection to the staff, and perhaps some local knowledge and context around why that particular property might need to be sold. And regarding the kennel establishments, the delegation in its current form gives the staff authority to refuse a kennel licence and advise the applicant objecting to the decision to refuse to go to SAT and appeal, thus bypassing the council. I'm in view of the view that, in fairness to the proponent, the applicant, council as decision maker should have refused the application referred to them for a decision, thus saving the applicant the added complication referring the matter to SAT in the first instance. It may be that council agree with the staff's recommendation and go ahead and refuse, but on the other hand, we could completely take the opposite view and approve. Either way, the applicant then can be satisfied that their elected council have been part of the decision-making process. So those are the reasons why for those two slight amendments, Mr. Chair.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any other speakers for? All happy? Okay, so I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Any amendment? It's passed. Fine.
Thank you.
So it's a substantive motion.
Well, it's an amended officer's recommendation, so the motion was...
We've amended and then that becomes substantive.
You're the ruler.
You have to move the substantive.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll move that.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Burgon. Okay, so we're all good. I'll put the substantive. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0, absolute majority. Okay, item 12.1.3, Behaviour Complaints Committee Member Nomination. We have received names from Councillor Boylan, Councillor Gillett. Is there Councillor Lovett? Did you as well, Councillor Lovett? Councillor Crispin, Councillor Burgoyne, Councillor Campbell. So which members? Deputy Councillor Burgoyne, Councillor Crispin. Deputy. Okay. So committee members will be Councillor Boylan, Councillor Lovett, Councillor Gillett, Deputy Councillor Burgoyne, Councillor Campbell, and Councillor Crispin. Okay. Okay. Move Councillor Burgoyne. Second, Councillor Lovett. Like to be any discussion? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0, absolute majority. Item 12.1.4, Australian Community Precinct Consultation and Workshop Outcomes. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just letting you know that I have an alternate recommendation that hopefully all councillors have seen.
So let's move Councillor Campbell, second Councillor Bromham. Have a chance. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Bromham, for seconding this alternate motion. Today I ask councillors to consider making a decision regarding the location of the Australian Community Precinct. The officer's report recommends a further 6 weeks consultation on the 2 preferred sites that resulted from the recent council workshop. I asked staff for an approximate cost to carry out this consultation and was provided a guide, and I thank the Director of Community and Lifestyle for the effort in putting together this information. And I offer the following. A 6-week consultation ordinarily requires an additional 6 weeks that officers require to plan and report on the activity. So a 12-week process in total. And this timeline will have to be adjusted to 10 weeks in order to meet the time frame, thereby placing pressure on staff. The 10-week consultation process would cost approximately $1,000 in materials, and staff would need to reprioritise their workloads in order to meet the timeline, which is calculated at approximately 173 hours, which equates to $19,770 in wages allocated to the consultation and report writing. So in order to do this additional consultation, it's a cost of approximately $20,770. And the consultation is planned to take place over the December-January period, adding additional pressure on our staff. And I acknowledge that staff have indicated that they would accommodate this requirement and commend them for their commitment to the task. However, councillors, I would suggest to you that we have already listened to the community, and approximately 42% of the 180 respondents preferred the current site as the preferred site. I acknowledge that the Treendale site is a new site that was presented to us late in the appreciation process and for consideration. However, a site in Treendale was considered in the last consultation and did not receive strong support. The CEO has indicated the need to make a decision sooner rather than later in order to move forward. We need to respect the outcome of the initial community consultation, show leadership and trust in ourselves to make the right decision on behalf of the community, and ensure that staff time, effort and resources are now concentrated in delivering this council decision moving forward. So today, councillors, I ask you to consider in making a determination that the new Australian Community Precinct is established in this current location. Thank you.
Councillor Bromham. You're a speaker against the alternative motion. Speakers for? No. Any speakers at all? Good. Okay. So we'll put the alternative motion. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? One. Motion is carried. 10-1. Councillor Crispin, we'll let you stay out because we're dealing with the next item, sorry. A proposed alternate motion was moved by Councillor Campbell, second Councillor Brom, Councillor Lovett, and was passed 10-1. Okay, item 12.2.2, tender T102021, the Promenade Extension. Move Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Dickinson. Is there likely to be any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Sam, would you be able to get Councillor Crispin for me, please? Thank you. Councillor Jackson, were you leaving on 12.2.3?
Yep, you're right.
.2.2, Councillor Crispin was passed as the office per the recommendation. Okay, item 12.2.3, tender T112021, Cathedral Avenue upgrade and shared park. Move Councillor Dickinson, second Councillor Bromham. And likely to be any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Recommendation was carried as per officers. Item 12.2.4, Local Roads Community Infrastructure Program Phase 3. Move Councillor Bromham, second Councillor Lovett. Likely to be any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12.3.2, wait for Councillor Fauna to... Okay, item 12.3.2, proposed extractive industry, lot 4, Runningmead Road, Wellesley. Move Councillor Bromham. Second Councillor Crispin. Likely to be any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Motion carried as per recommendation. Councillor Cavani, that link's getting worse. Item 12.3.3, use not listed, rural tourism, lot 101, number 124, Government Road, Wellesley. Move Councillor Burgoyne. Second Councillor Campbell. Likely any discussion, councillors? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0, absolute majority. Item 12.3.4, use not listed, catering, lot 1, Rogers Road, Uda.
Did you do 2 recommendations?
Watch that. One and 2, okay. So, officer recommendation 2 of 2. Thank you, Mr. Hall. Move Councillor Jackson, second Councillor Dickinson. Likely to be any discussion? Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0, absolute majority. No? On that one? No. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, item 12.3.4, use not listed, catering, lot 1 at Rogers Road, Uda. Officer's recommendation at 1 of 2. Councillor Dickinson moving, Councillor Prollins second. Any discussion, councillors? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 13-0, absolute majority. Recommendation 2 of 2. Move Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Campbell. Any discussion? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0. Item 12.5.1, tender T092021, Leisure Centre Court expansion, design development and documentation. Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Campbell. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? No? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 13-0. Item 12.5.2, Australia Day Awards. Move Councillor Campbell, second Councillor Burgoyne. Likely to have any discussion, councillors? Put the motions. Anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 13-0. Item 12.5.3, Brunswick River Cottages Stage 3 funding application. Move Councillor Dickinson, second Councillor Burgoyne. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors? No. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 13-0. Okay, item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. Item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting. We have a notice of... That should have been part of the...
Yes.
So,
I think you will just do is suspend the 13.
Okay, so item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given. From Councillor Beach.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I wish to move that Council notes the adoption of the Greater Bunbury Sub-Regional Strategy by the West Australian Planning Commission and requires a review of the Shire's local planning strategy. As part of that review, consideration is to be given to recommending scheme provisions that set a size limit on additional dwellings on land zoned rural, residential, priority agriculture and rural.
Second Councillor Burgoyne. Over to you, Councillor Beach.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I think staff have summed it up pretty well in their comments and support the motion. It came about obviously from the discussion that we had at the last meeting, and it just seeks to give staff direction when reviewing the local planning strategy the option to consider whether one-size-fits-all approach to ancillary dwellings and outbuildings is adequate, or to consider where more property-based solution is more appropriate. And just to give you the idea, is that I think most zones are 70 square metre of dwelling, and that's what we're trying to, that's what we looked at last meeting on a 100,000 square metre property. We already know only 25 acres, which, 70 square metres, it gets lost in there. So it probably, if the council support, the review will come up with a more equitable system that can be considered during the review of the LPS. So just a review, no action at this stage.
Councillor Burgoyne. Are there any speakers against? Any others for? Pretty happy with that, Councillor Beach?
Yep, very happy, thank you, sir.
Okay, we'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 13-0. Okay, item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting. Neil? Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given. Neil? Item 16, sorry. New business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of meeting. So we have late report of 17.2.1 be put on the agenda. I'm happy to move that. Is there a seconder? Councillor Campbell. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 17, matters behind closed doors. Motion that council move behind closed doors. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Burgoyne. Put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? That's carried. Just to ask all members of the public and okay, item 18, closure of the meeting. We declare the meeting closed at 5:32 and thank everyone for their attendance, and just for you, Councillor Beach.